Greetings and salutations, my friend. I'm going to be doing a video today on precognition and remote viewing. A session I did yesterday with successful data. Okay, I'm going to use diagrams to anyways, there we go. I think that's fine. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to first talk about a precognitive experience. Then second, I will talk about a remote viewing session I did yesterday, May 19th, 2020 in the afternoon that was successful. First, cognition is to perceive. Precognition is to perceive prior to perception. Precognition means to experience something before it happens. On November 6, 2016, I made this diagram inspired by Plato's Platonic solids that David Wilcock talked about in Wisdom Teachings, which I show on the Gaia network. When I made this diagram, I imagined a man in a pyramid. This was just coming from my own imagination at the time. I was trying to relate Platonic solids to what it means to be human. So I put a human inside a pyramid. I then made a more complex diagram and drew some lines. I employ symmetry, but when I made this picture, I drew lines crossing to the right, but not to the left. At the time I thought, Peter, you must balance it, like yin and yang. That's how nature works. But something in me said, no, stop, don't do that. I did not know why. So I stopped. It seemed to feel right the way it was, so I left it. I shared the first version of it with Gaia and David Wilcock. May 10th, 2020, almost 4 years after making this diagram, I'm taking a course with David Wilcock called The Great Awakening. And David shows a diagram from a book that is no longer in print that he bought 30 some odd years ago. It is of the Great Pyramid in Egypt and what it looks like inside. I've never seen the inside of the pyramid as a diagram until David showed it in his course. Notice to the right there's a polar star in the sky, David's diagram. Notice how I have lines coming together in a similar location on the right. Also notice the passageway goes below the pyramid. Notice how my lines go below the pyramid to a similar location beneath the pyramid. So to the right of the pyramid and beneath the pyramid, both occurring there. Now notice the passageway that goes up through the person meditating in the pyramid. In David's course last week, he talked about the inside is symbolic representation of a person. Notice I have a person in the pyramid. Notice how lines I drew continue to go above the pyramid where the Pleiades stars are, which is also in his diagram. David correlates the 26,000 galaxy procession, that is our solar system going around the galaxy, like that of Earth, 365 days of a normal Earth year. This is integrated into the pyramid, and it's also related to Christ, because there's a timeline that's also done in his course as well, that talks about Egyptian inches. Too much information to go into here, but suffice to say, it was about Jesus, it was about time, and about integrating time into the pyramid, all of the time of this one huge procession, which is the solar system going around the galaxy, like the Earth goes around the sun. It's about 26,000 years, just under that. After the Sunday, on Tuesday, I meditated on the Shroud of Turin, the cloth that covered Jesus, that burned an image onto the cloth that is still a mystery to this day. The most recent dating of the Shroud of Turin is 1st century, taken from a middle part of the cloth. I meditated on it and connected to it. I thought of being the pyramid. Then, Tuesday of last week, my wife wanted to watch a show and a movie that night. So we did. I love watching things with her. There was a show called Hollywood on Netflix. We watched season 1, episode 2 of Hollywood. This is important. There's an actor playing Rock Hudson who meets Vivian Lee at a dinner. He says, "You're Vivian Lee from Gone with the Wind." She laughs and says, "Yes." Then my wife and I go for a walk, and then we come home on Tuesday night last week. When we get back, the internet's down. It's not working. She goes to bed early. I'm frustrated because I can't connect to anything on the internet. I can't watch anything because that's all of our entertainment's done through the internet. We don't have cable television. I start going on my computer looking up to see if I download any media to watch, like over the past couple of years, because sometimes I download stuff. I don't find anything. I come across pictures, though, I made a long time ago. I noticed the pyramid with the man in it. I thought, oh, nice. Then because David was just talking about pyramids and this person in it. I thought that was really cool, He talks about the symbolism of a person in the pyramid. Kind of, Well, not kind of, he literally talks about that. Then I saw a second diagram with all the lines I drew. I remember not wanting to draw lines on the left because I always balance things out. I remember distinctly not wanting to do that. I look at the picture and I'm like, I say, what the fuck? I swear, okay. And I was like, I made this 4 years ago, and I see David's diagram the week, I saw David's diagram a few days earlier. This is 4 years later. Okay, so here's the properties of the video with the date and the picture. And then you can see the video that I made that actually shows me click on the picture. Okay, and it shows the date there and from 2016. And also you'll notice that there's a picture of Vivian Lee from Gone with the Wind. Rather interesting, isn't it? We just watched that person playing her talk about that about an hour earlier. And I'm finding a diagram that is profoundly similar to the diagram that David Wilcock did a week earlier as well. So this is a precognitive experience where someone sees something and creates something, and then later something like that or exactly like that appears. And I didn't know I was doing that at the time. I didn't know I was going to be taking a course with David Wilcock 4 years later almost. I didn't know that I was going to watch a show called Hollywood where someone says, "You're Vivian Lee from Gone with the Wind." My internet goes down. Otherwise, I never would have found this diagram that I made. And when I find this diagram, in the folder, right next to it, is this picture of Vivian Lee next to the file. These are called synchronicities, and it has to do with what one would call more than coincidence, which points to things that are occurring that are on another plane of consciousness to allow us to understand that exists. So this is a precognitive experience. Okay, now part 2, remote viewing. For those who do not know, remote viewing was developed by the United States Army in the 1970s. It is a formal way of doing what one would refer to psychic information gathering. The remote viewers are given a target and are completely blind to it. They have no idea what the target is. The remote viewers view the target, and then after, many of the data gathered is the same for multiple reviewers for targets that they are completely blind to, meaning they have no idea what the target is. You got many different people viewing the same target that they're blind to, and they come up with similar descriptions, data rather. And so this is how they can confirm the likelihood of the accuracy of that data which is remote viewed when they connect to something. The remote viewers are given a random number to remote view. This number is written on an envelope and given to the remote viewer after the session is complete. The remote viewer, after completing the session, opens it, the envelope. Sometimes double-blind remote viewing is done. This is where a person picks a target, puts it in an envelope, and gives it to another person who then does the session with the remote viewer. This ensures that even the person running the remote viewing can have absolutely no effect on the outcome, as they don't even know themselves what the target is in the envelope. When I did a remote viewing session yesterday, May 19th, 2020 in the afternoon, I took the target from a remote viewing website. You could say this is better than even a double-blind remote viewing. Why? Because there is no person at all involved. Just a number on a web page. When you click on it afterwards, it shows you the target. Okay? This number was P012. I have not done remote viewing like this exactly since last October, although every day I'm always connecting to things with consciousness because I can do that. But I haven't actually sat down and done this. It's been quite a few months, actually. Sometime probably last year, yeah. So anyways, so when I went to go do this, I thought, oh, am I going to get it right? You know, what happens if I get it wrong? Am I going to feel bad? I can't, because I've been successful doing it before, you know, so, and then I went, just forget it, just drop it. Just do it, you know, have fun with it, and you know how to do it. Just see what happens. So I went ahead and did it. Okay, so, all right, so traditional remote viewers write out the number and then draw an ideogram. This is a subconscious drawing of a symbol done within half a second. This drawing is kind of like a time-space portal, meaning it is quantum entanglement with the target. It has a quantum entanglement. And the idea is you have this sub-mind, and if you create an image really quickly after writing this target number that's given to you, that somehow your breath and feeling connect to your subbrain, which allow you to connect to the event, the target rather. And in doing so, it becomes like a portal in which one can continue to probe to get more information. So that's the function of the ideogram essentially. Before doing this, one meditates and has a quiet mind. Then as the mind is quiet and one probes the ideogram, data comes to the remote viewer. This data should be less specific, meaning if you get Mount Everest, the data really should be mountain. The brain wants to attribute everything. In remote viewing, you do not want specific information. You really want plain descriptions. And you want multiple data plain descriptions. You want to get many different words that describe something. It's plain. It's because the brain wants to organize it. We could bias it quite easily. So the less specific it is, the better. But what happens is you get a large number of data points, and that data points, each one is like a puzzle piece, which can be put together to show you what the picture is that you're actually looking at. What is it that you're looking at? Also, the data will also tell you, are these consistent with the target itself? So some of the data that is remote viewed is profoundly specific, especially in the circumstance I'm going to show you right now. When I did remote viewing yesterday, I do it a little different. I draw an ideogram. It's more of a, just like they do. But after Courtney Brown does this, and other remote viewers. But after I do this, I use my right middle finger on my right hand and my chest, and I also use my chest, and I imagine the target number P012 in front of me. I go through it with my chest. So it's like I move through the number P012. I move through it with my breathing. I also use my right middle finger to touch it over and over, and I say P012. I say it like a mantra, P012, P012, P012. I do this over and over and over. Then I get quieter, and I just see it in my mind, I hear it in my mind, and I no longer have to say it out loud, and then I continue to have my chest move through this image of P012, and my finger keeps touching it over and over and over again. I'm probing, what I'm doing is I'm probing the number itself. There's quantum entanglement with this number. And in an hour after I do this remote viewing, which I'm completely blind to, I will be clicking on this P012, which will bring me to the information of which the target is. So I'm using, what will I see? What will I see in an hour from now? So I keep connecting to that. And after, immediately when I do this, okay, I'll tell you what the target is. The blooming of the flower Titan arum at the New York Botanical Garden, okay? So now remember, at the time of doing the remote viewing, I only have the target number P012. I don't have anything else. So the target is actually three things. One, describing a flower blooming. Two, the flower is a Titan arum, okay? The third target is the New York Botanical Gardens, which is where the flower is, okay? So here I am, and you'll see a picture right now of what I wrote down. These are the words that I wrote down when I did this remote viewing yesterday, okay? So you can see the words there. And the very first word I got when I did this was water. And describing a flower blooming, water is part of that. Okay, that goes with it. The next thing I saw, though, was a long, thin bolt that's moving in a circular motion and moving, okay? Screwing into something. So there's something long, so a description of that would be something long and thin is moving, okay? So describe a flower blooming. In my mind, when I think of a flower, I think of a stem that comes out of the ground, which is thin and long and is moving. So something that is long and thin is moving, and water is used to help the flower grow. These are the first two things I get, and that's related to describe a flower blooming. It's important to understand not that my brain took something that's, my subbrain was communicating to me, and the connection was saying there's something thin and long and it's moving, and my brain said, hey, it's a bolt, and it's long bolt, and it's screwing into something and it's moving. That's what my brain did. So it's important to say, describe what that actually is. So I described it, and when you see the description, you can see how my brain misattributed it and called it a bolt that's screwing in, you see? So for anyone who wants to remote view, you can take things and make them, describe them more without the attribution of bolt particularly, okay? That's one example, and that shows something there. Okay. So the next thing here is I heard the word come to me, cubby. I don't know what a cubby is, not a clue, okay? I'm like, all right, so after I finished my session, I look up the word cubby. And cubby is a small house, a playhouse. It's for kids. So the cubby is houses that are smaller than normal houses that kids can play in. So something that's smaller and kids play in. Immediately after I heard the word cubby, I heard two more words come to me. Electric, and then I heard the word train. All right? So kids playing with houses that are smaller, which is a cubby, and then electric, train. And I wasn't sure if electric and train were related to each other. I just knew that they occurred right after one another. So I wrote it down with this. I put a line in between to say, hey, I don't know if this is related because this is data. Remember that. I don't want to attribute it. I want to stay in the space of data. Okay, so I just remote viewed this, okay, yesterday. After I did this, I go New York Botanical Gardens, okay? I Google this, and what do I find? I find this picture that you're looking at, Holiday Train Show. It's been going on for the past 28 years, and it's very famous, and here are kids playing. And you'll also notice this as I look at the video as well. All the houses are smaller. And everything's small in this because it's all little, and kids are here looking at this. So you got cubby, which is a small house that's smaller than the regular big house that kids play with. So you got kids playing in something that's smaller. Whoa, okay. I literally got the words electric train. And we've got an electric train show at the Botanical Gardens in New York that is really popular, and it's been famous, and it's been going on for the past 28 years. This is a direct hit on the subject of the Botanical Gardens. Okay, so the next thing I hear the word pink. Well, guess what color the flower is? It's a pinkish color. All right, that's consistent as well. Then I hear the word Nile. I thought it could be nail, but I definitely heard Nile. And I thought, okay, Nile. Well, that's a rather specific thing. What is that? That's a river. Okay, so I connected with a river. Okay, and in the video that is part of this target, when you click on it, there's this page you go to, and there's a video at the Botanical Gardens where a man is talking about where this flower comes from. And this flower comes from West Sumatra. He says this flower comes from West Sumatra. So I look up West Sumatra. Where is it from? That's Indonesia. And in Indonesia, there's numerous. So this flower grows only in rainforest in Indonesia, where there are 3 major rivers that go through this country, West Sumatra, and the Batong, Itori, and the Kampar River are 2 of them. So in all likelihood, this flower comes from a wetland area where the rainforests are, which is near the rivers. So this is consistent with what the guy says in the video, where it comes from. Okay. Then the next thing I hear is, I didn't hear this. I then see the letter A, very specifically. Now, what is the flower called? It's called the Titan Arun. Okay, so the last word in the flower starts with an A. That's related to it. Sometimes I get letters, or I'll get words, like the electric train, which is like, you can't doubt that one at all. That's like right on the money. Okay, so you've got the right color of the flower. You got the first letter. I thought it might be a first letter of something in the name. You've got river, which is where it grows near, where it comes from. So let me just continue here with the rest of the things. Okay. Then I saw vehicles and wheels, and I'm like, I have no idea. Like, why am I seeing all these things seem so sporadic? Like, why they don't seem to fit together? Like, when I'm doing a blind view, I don't know what the target is. So then when I looked at I looked at this afterwards. I went, well, the Botanical Gardens people travel there. They drive their cars there and park. Okay, so that's part of the Botanical Garden, which is one of the targets that is part of this whole target here. I then heard the word stone. And there are stones in the gardens where the flower is, in a little area, which you can see in the picture. Then I heard the word modern. Okay, and I'm like, what? Okay, sure. Modern. And then, so what's the opposite of modern? Or what one could say pre-modern? Because where do these flowers come from? How do they grow? I think this is related to the river piece there that I said to you before. So it comes from the rainforest in the West Sumatra forest, which is pre-modern. Now the building that it is in, and I don't know it's the Botanical Building in New York, is a modern building. So this is modern. I know that modern is related to what's going on here. So, and then the last word I heard was environment. And I was going to write nature, but I couldn't figure it out because I couldn't figure it out if this was like, I felt like it was nature, but then I felt like it's not nature. Okay. So I wrote environment, I felt nature, and I was like, what? Oh, I don't know. Okay. So then, so the Botanical Garden is a man-made environment, you see, of nature. So I had a bit of a, what is this? I wanted to put nature there, but I thought, no, I can't put it there. So then I was like, why is environment? Why am I getting this word? And I think it's because it's a combination of nature and man-made environment. That's why. So that's what happened at that time when I was doing this. So as you can see here, the target, which I had mentioned to you before, okay, the target was describing a flower blooming, water, and something thin that's moving, okay? I could have done better with that part, but that's my idea of a flower blooming. The actual flower doesn't bloom quite like that. But this, I was seeing what I was going to see an hour ahead of time. Okay, so I knew I was going to click on this and I was going to see stuff. So I wondered, what am I going to see? And this is what I saw. I saw those descriptions, water and something thin that's moving. Okay, that's the description of a flower moving, coming up through the ground. I could have done a bit better job on that for sure. The flower, I got the color right on the flower. I also got a letter right in the first name of the flower. The botanical gardens, that one right on the money. I got kids playing, the word cubby, kids playing with the house that's smaller. I got 2 words exactly, electric train. Both of it direct hit, okay? Very famous for this Hollywood, the holiday train show at the New York Botanical Gardens, okay? That's right there, right on the money. So I also got a river, which is where there are rivers in Sumatra. That's not as strong, but it's consistent. Vehicles, that's consistent. Still, it's not that specific, but you got to. And stone, which is it's near a stone, it's modern and it's an environment. So what happens is when you see some of the data which are very persuasive, it's like, okay, this data is just too accurate. The color of the flower, the electric train, the kids playing, the small houses. This data is too accurate to be, oops, that's a good guess. But there's too many. What happens is when you add up all the different data which are accurate, what happens is you can look at the whole picture. And if I were to probe this further, I could probably do this numerous times and maybe get a better picture of what this place is. This was just one sitting. So I sat down, I meditated, or I did a remote viewing for 20 to 30 minutes. In the first 10 seconds, I got the first 2 hits, which was water and something thin that's moving. Then I heard nothing. I had nothing for 15 minutes, and I just sat there. I didn't meditate that much before I should have, but whatever, this is the way I do it. So I'm sitting there for 15 minutes, and I got nada, but I keep going through the P012 with my chest and also with my right finger, my hand. And then at about the 15-minute mark, that's when all the rest of the data started to come in. So here, the reason I did this video is I wanted to let people know that everyone is capable of doing this. Everyone does it, and sometimes you don't know you're doing things like this. Sometimes you get data that you attribute, and sometimes you get pure data, which you don't attribute. Sometimes we can't. In life itself, this happens everywhere, all the time. And the benefit to a person listening to this is that is the empowerment of it. It's like these are some undeniable data points that occur, which I'm describing here today. And so just to know that you listening, you can do this. If you take some time to practice this. I recommend Courtney Brown if you want to look for training online. He has some great videos at the Farsight Institute. And I'm really glad I got to share this with you today, the precognition of the diagram that matches the pyramid. And one other story I have to tell you about the pyramid as well is, because it's related to Christ, Jesus, is that I don't normally talk about this because I don't know how to process it. I don't normally share this, but number of years ago, I got stigmata on two of my wrists, one foot, literally. And my wife saw this. I had it happen to me a couple times. On Wednesday of last week, after I did this meditation on this connection, I connected to the Shroud of Turin, which is the cloth that Christ was in, that burned an image on it that they can't even figure out. They can't even figure out how to do that today with technology, and dated to the first century. I connected to that data. I connected to that and just sat there, and I connected to the Egyptian pyramid, and I connected to the image that I drew of the diagram 4 years ago. And I wear socks at home. And whenever I sit on the couch, which is where I do a lot of my meditation and write lots of things that I write, I take my socks off. And then when I go to walk through the house, I put my socks back on. So I take my socks on and off like 6, 7, 8 times a day just to walk around the house. So I look at my feet 6 or 7 times, 8 times a day, okay? Because I'm putting a sock on, taking a sock off. I'll show a picture right now of what happened to my foot. I had a mark appear on my foot. The previous night I felt pain in my foot. I felt pain in both my wrists as well, different times. Nothing appeared on my wrists, but I did notice this mark appear on my foot. And this was literally right within 24 hours after of connecting through the pyramid and connecting to the Shroud of Turin. And so what that really means is that we have the capacity to connect to things through time and space, both the past and the future. And the benefit of that really simply is that it can manifest as thoughts in our head as data, like in remote viewing. It can manifest as precognitive. I didn't plan to see the future of something occurring and when you can have unintended precognitive experiences, or you can have intended remote viewing as well. Okay, those are two different ways of that. And instead of getting data with the stigmata, instead of getting thoughts, your flesh literally vibrates in a manner just like your brain does, and it manifests like an image, if you will, on your skin, on your body, a cut or pain, or literally you get marks in your hand like a scar that have happened to me before. So it's very emotional to have that happen, and naturally it's very odd, and I don't normally talk about it. Most people would never, because most people don't have that as an experience. It's better not to talk about it, because I find it if you talk about something that people haven't had as an experience, it often can create fear, and that's not a good thing to do. And so I normally don't talk about it for that reason. So yeah, okay, what else was I going to say? Let's see here. I think that's it. So I have one thing to add here. I was going to end it, but I came across something that's very interesting, and I wanted to talk about it. I noticed that the flower is called the Titan arum, which it means corpus flower, corpus, like dead, because it gives off a smell that's really garbagey and smells like death. So I thought this was interesting because I was connecting to the Shroud of Turin earlier with the pyramid. The Shroud of Turin is a corpse of Jesus. This is a synchronicity. So you've got a corpse that's ascending, that's burning an image onto the Shroud of Turin, and you've got a flower which is called the corpse flower. So I thought this was interesting, and I thought I was going to mention it here. And then I realized there were some other synchronicities over the past week and a half with relation to, you could say, the word death. And I find that interesting. We're infinite beings that go on forever, so the word death is really a distortion. However, we do experience things that we call that which is leaving the body. So to recap here, I'm just going to go through some dates since May 10th and what's occurred that's related to this. The first date is May 10th, 2020. David Wilcock's pyramid is created. He gives a diagram, and it shows the pole star and the whole thing, which I've already talked about. And it's related to Christ, and it has a whole thing with the time period, the whole, it integrates the 25,920 years solar cycle as well as the Earth cycle and other time components with relation to Christ. And it has this, you have to read his book, The Great Awakening, to probably really get it. It's coming out in June. If you're interested in that, you can check it out, David Wilcock, The Great Awakening. So May 10th, I see this diagram, and I then, on May 12th, 2 days later, I find my pyramid. I've already described this, so I'm just going to recap it. May 10th, David's pyramid diagram. May 12th, I find my pyramid diagram and I connect it to the shroud. And I start to connect to the Shroud of Turin that night on May 12th, which is Jesus' corpse, his dead body, before and during ascension. I'm connecting to that, like remote viewing. I'm connecting to the experience. I feel pain in my wrist and my left foot. On May 13th, the day after, stigmata appears on my left foot. Okay. And then on May 15th, 2020, I watch Farsight, and they do a COVID-19 remote view of how it occurred. And during it, I watched the whole thing but I connected to this being that night. I connected to, there's this hybrid alien being in space that they talked about when multiple viewers saw this in space. And so this person could have been responsible for a lab explosion that caused a release of this virus through Wuhan. And this is what the Farsight was looking at the time. Although not all of them came to that conclusion, but one of them said that. And so anyways, I started to connect to this alien hybrid that night, and because I wanted to. And so I connected to him through energy, through the memory of the Farsight connecting to him. I was able to connect to him. I connected to the being for about 30 minutes that night. I quietly sat with him. His energy moves fast, like the wings of a hummingbird, really, really fast. He does not like me there. He's like a racist, but instead of hating a race, he hates humans. He was raised this way. This is the energy I felt with him. After sitting with him for about 20 minutes, he wouldn't let me hear anything about him. But then eventually, I sat with him so long that he was not intimidated by me. After about 20 minutes, he eventually sees me as a scientist, not a threat, just someone observing. I continue to sit with him and feel the essence of species conflict in the universe, where a unified homogeneous species, that's a species that's the same, is threatened by a unified diversified species, kind of like what humans are. It's a systemic threat. So the very existence of a unified diversified species is a threat to a homogeneous species, because an individual that's homogeneous, there's some degree of individuality there, can integrate that as an experience, and it could cause problems in a homogeneous system, systemically speaking. So the very existence of a unified, diversified species in itself, just simply existing, is a threat. So I felt this information, and I thought that was interesting. I also experienced through the pyramid connection the previous night that there's a distinction in the universe as well with relation to role and in how we attribute role. So basically there's role in dharma and there's individuality in karma. Okay, so I'll tell you what that means. I connected to this through the pyramid with the Shroud of Turin. I experienced this. I'm playing a role of Peter. If I'm playing a role of Peter, I'm playing the role of Peter. So that's this person right here. And if I identify as that role, then that's my individuality and it's karma. If I realize it's a role and I'm playing a role, then it's dharma, which is law, which is consciously perceiving and consciously creating dharma, which is law. And now however, if I identify as the role, then I experience individuality, which is a distortion, and it is a karma. So this is one of the things I experienced with the pyramid previously to this. It's important with relation to the other data I talked about with relation to a unified homogeneous species threatened by a unified diversified species. So these two things, and as well as the nature of what role is, role in dharma or individuality in karma. So identity is really being aware that I am not the role, but I'm playing it. And when I'm aware of that, that's dharma, which is law. Okay, so I think I've said that enough now. If I misattribute a role, and I think it's me, that's individuality, and it's karma, and that's a distortion. So I communicated this to the hybrid extraterrestrial individual, but I was not obvious about it. I don't know how, but somehow I was able to communicate this message, and the extraterrestrial hybrid being responded in a neutral to positive manner with relation to it. Okay, so on May 16th, the next night, okay, so I'll just recap real quick. May 10th, David Wilcock Pyramid with Christ. May 12th, I find the pyramid that I made with the shroud, the corpse of Jesus ascending. May 13th, I get stigmata. May 15th, I watch Farsight COVID-19. I connect to the hybrid being in space that they're talking about. May 16th, 2020, I vibrate my body again on another plane of consciousness, like the fourth and fifth density of consciousness, whereas third density is like regular human, okay? I do this all the time with my breathing. This hybrid extraterrestrial connects to me this time. And I didn't try to connect to him. It's like I popped my head above the water and it's immediately was like, hey, you're there. I'm going to connect to you. And it was negative energy. In retrospect, he does not like that I connected to him. At the time, I was very tired. I always breathe pranayama, which is vibrating my body with breath in a specific way. So I always cause myself to go into these other planes of consciousness, which are fourth and fifth density, you could call, and whereas third density is a human vibration. And there are laws for each density. So when you go there, there are laws there at each one, just as there are laws in third density. So out of frustration, because I didn't want him to keep coming to me at the time, I just was not able to focus. I suppose I should have gone and sat by myself, and I could have done it. But instead, I was sitting with my wife, and I went and I poured a glass of wine. I then drank a lot of alcohol. And this causes me to vibrate at a frequency lower than fourth and fifth density. And so if the hybrid extraterrestrial wants to interact with me, he will have to physically come into third physical density to interact with me. That's the law of physical density here. So I get drunk, okay? That's May 16th on that night, just to kind of make those vibrations go away. And there's better ways of doing that, but that's what I did that night. On May 17th, in the morning, after May 16th, I wake up, and on the second floor outside our bathroom window is a mutilated squirrel, no face, torn apart, and in 17 years of living here with my wife and our son, I've never seen anything like this, nor has she. I then removed it from our landing on the second floor and with a snow rake, which is really, I wouldn't have been able to get it probably off there without it. So anyways, I removed the carcass, the dead body, off the thing. Then on the same day, May 17th, 2020, I tweet something about COVID-19, creating awareness, and I got a non sequitur response from someone who wrote a response to my Twitter, which you'll see right here, and it said, I thought Peter Bowen was dead. That is my name. My artist name is Peter M. Mahahead, which is a play on a macro and the microcosm, essentially. I won't go into that, but that's, my artist name. So this person wrote this to me. They saw my name on my page and actually went and found something and said, I thought Peter Bowen was dead. Like, he actually had to come to my page, see my name, and then find a video that says this guy died. Okay, so I'm an infinite being. I find a lot of this actually kind of funny. That's how you keep your third eye open as well, is not to take life too seriously, and you can laugh, and laughter opens your third eye. Just so you know that. That's your pineal gland. And okay, so I go to the man's Twitter page. The man is highly ignored. User on Twitter. He's a highly ignored user on Twitter with no likes or responses from people. Okay, I'm like, okay, whatever. May 19th, 2020. I do a blind remote viewing. I have no idea what the target is. Okay, May 19th, just a few days ago. And the target is the Titum Arum at the New York Botanical Gardens, which I've just done a remote view, which I just described to you. Well, you should know that Titum Arum means corpus flower, because it stinks, it smells, it gives off a really garbagey smell. Some people call it like a smell of death, like a dead body. So I remote view on May 19th. Sorry, there's a car going by here. Kind of loud, motorcycle. So on May 19th, I remote view a flower called the corpus flower, okay? So I realized while editing on May 21st, today, all these synchronicities. Synchronicities are beyond coincidence and have meaning. Many parts are seen as a whole, as an aggregate giving perspective to something. You see? That's very important to understand that. So with all of these synchronicities of corpse and death and so forth, just a tremendous amount within a week and a half span period of time. I find it fascinating and interesting. I'm an infinite being. This is no threat to me because I can't be destroyed. So I do find it very, very interesting, though. So as well as the stigmata that I received on my foot on that other day as well, when I was connecting to the Shroud of Turin, which was the corpse of Christ, burning an image into the Shroud of Turin. So all of these things which I've mentioned here, which you can see on the calendar, I'm going to put a calendar below on the screen here. I'm going to put a calendar here that you can see this, and all of this happened, and I thought it was pertinent both as individual parts and as a whole when all the parts are seen together. We are infinite beings. A quiet mind is incapable of experiencing fear. Thank you for listening and watching. I wanted to add this little message on here at the end as I was editing today because I thought that was really interesting. And I have a little video that'll pop off here where you see me saying or thank you again, I guess. So yeah, okay. So cheerio. Oh, that's the precognition and the remote viewing. Thanks for joining me. All right, cool.